Ryan Day hired an offensive coordinator, and 3 weeks later, he's out the door. Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. I'm Stephen Means. That's Nathan Baird, and that's Andrew Gillis. Bill O'Brien was hired 3 weeks ago to replace Ryan Day as not only the play caller, but take over the reins of the offense. And the way Ryan Day talked about it during a Wednesday morning press conference, it's not something he necessarily wanted to do, but understood that just the direction that college football was going, it was nearly impossible for him to hold on to that responsibility. And he thought he found a guy who matched all the criteria he was looking for and a guy who could take over that role, Nathan. And now he's out the door, and it seems like Ryan Day is going to have to start that search over from scratch.
Well, I don't know about from scratch because he, again, had gone through this process so recently. So there's obviously some contacts that have been made, some names that I'm sure. And not only that, but this purgatory has sort of hung out there all week, right? Like this started late last week, the Bill O'Brien to Boston College connection. So Ryan Day had some heads up on this. So I wouldn't say from square one. I think he's starting, but I think he doesn't get to hire his plan A. He doesn't get to hire the guy who, at least at that time, among who was available, was the clear number one choice. We'll see if there's anybody else that has come available since then. There's obviously some names that are being floated now that weren't necessarily floated in the early speculation when Ryan Day, it was first known that he was looking in this direction. So we'll see where that goes. But it's not something that is shouldn't be a major setback for Ohio State since he just got here. He has had some involvement and was already doing some things and was at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center on Wednesday when we were there and has been involved. It shouldn't be a major setback, but it is still not ideal because it was part of what we all thought was an overdue step forward for Ryan Day as a head coach to do what you just said, Stephen, to make the decision that he needed to yield some of the day-to-day offensive responsibilities and the in-game offensive responsibilities in order to take a broader perspective on the program.
So, Andrew, part of O'Brien's responsibilities were going to be being the quarterback's coach. And you're talking about a quarterback room that has 3 new people in it. And the 2 guys who were in it have very limited experience, one because more of an injury situation, and the other one who just showed up last June. And so when you've got a room where 4 of the 5 guys are going through their first spring and winter at Ohio State, and then that 5th guy is coming off of an injury, just talk about how a decision like this impacts the quarterback room as it heads into a spring with another quarterback battle.
Yeah, I think the positive thing for Ohio State through this is that he wasn't here that long. So you're not talking about a situation where, Julian Sand and Aaron Noland were, recruited for months or years by Bill O'Brien, right? Like this isn't a situation where all of these guys have gotten to know him personally and, they've got a close relationship with him and they go back a while. So this does kind of impact the quarterback room, but I think it does kind of underscore the importance of adding a person to the staff who does have experience, because you do have 2 freshmen and that's a really unique room. And, you mentioned Lincoln Kienholz, like Lincoln Kienholz is coming and he just had his first year and he was not an early enrollee. And you hear Ryan Day talk about that a lot, where the first semester is kind of used as a leaping off point to when the players come back in the summer. Hey, they're not really freshmen anymore. Lincoln Kienholz didn't have that. So you've got 3 guys in this room that are pretty young. Devin Brown, he's inexperienced at the very least. You're talking about a guy, like you said, coming off an injury, hasn't really done very much. And then there's Will Howard, but that's kind of separate from the point, I think. So you need a guy that is a veteran type of coach, a guy who has seen a lot of different things, talked to a lot of different people, coached a lot of different people. And that's kind of what Bill O'Brien was in a nutshell, right? He's coached in the NFL. He's led his own college program. He's done things with great quarterbacks, great coaches. Like that was the sell. And that was something that I know the players were excited about to have in the program. And now that that's gone, you need someone there to fill that hole.
I think what helps with that is your head coach is a quarterback's coach by trade. So I would assume until he finds out who he decides to hire, Ryan Day is going to be spending a decent amount of time in that quarterback room. You've still got Todd Fitch in that room, who has served as a analyst for the last couple of years here. CJ Stroud and Kyle McCord were both very high on the knowledge that he was able to give them. But Nathan, the thing I want to ask you is, and this is not just for the sake of having a conversation, who else maybe fits that bill that could be lingering out there? That description that Bill O'Brien fit perfectly to a T and what Ryan Day is looking for. Is there another guy who maybe jumps to the top of your mind when you're thinking of someone who could fit that potential framework that Ryan Day was dealing with in trying to make this hire?
Well, the more I look at it, no, there's not, because I guess Chip Kelly would be the one. But even if you compare Chip Kelly's resume to Bill O'Brien's, Chip Kelly had I guess, longer college tenure originally with a bigger peak at Oregon than Bill O'Brien did at Penn State. Then Bill O'Brien went and won AFC South championships on the reg for the Houston Texans, which not everybody has been able to do since that franchise had started. So he's definitely got much, much more NFL experience and better NFL experience, because Chip Kelly was not a successful head coach in the NFL, which Ryan Day knows all too well because he got fired along with him at 2 different stops. So Bill O'Brien still, I thought it was a good hire the day it happened. I thought it made sense in a lot of ways because it was replacing what they lost with Kevin Wilson when he left for Tulsa, except you were replacing it with someone from an even higher tier in the coaching profession, I would say, at least in terms of his credentials and esteem and all those things, reputation. So I don't know that there's anybody out there that checks the boxes the same way. And if you look at some of the names that have come up, I actually just sent our listeners a text about this, our followers a text, 614-350-3315. Let's take a look at someone like Jason Candle, who's been the head coach at Toledo. Look at Bill O'Brien's experience compared to Jason Candle, and it is night and day. Like Bill O'Brien, again, successful NFL head coach, did get fired at the end, but most of his tenure a rousing success with the Houston Texans. Turned around Penn State, a Power 5 program in a really tough situation. Offensive coordinator in 2 different stints with the New England Patriots. Helped coach Tom Brady. Was the offensive coordinator at Alabama, like for Bill Belichick, like those sort of credentials. And then Jason Candle, who I think is a good head coach and comes with some good credentials, has spent the entirety of his career either as a player and coach at Mount Union or at Toledo. That's it. Those 2 places. That's the only places he's ever been. And he keeps being named for Power 5 jobs and isn't getting anywhere there. So he doesn't have anywhere near that same traction as a head coach. So it's not me saying that Jason Candle couldn't be a successful candidate here, or Joe Moorhead, who has been a head coach, but it was at Ole Miss where he got fired, and now at Akron, which isn't very good. And you see what I'm saying? Like there is a drop off in credentials pretty quickly. I think in a broader sense, yes, you can find someone who has head coach experience, who has been an offensive coordinator, who knows about quarterbacks. Yes, you can find that. But the number of guys who had those credentials at the level that Bill O'Brien did is not long. And you further narrow it down to the guys who are willing to take a college offensive coordinator job right now.
Well, and it to add in on that, it's you have to find a guy who's willing to take that offensive coordinator job right now, because again, sometimes like this is just not a place that some people want to be. You do hear this a lot. I think some of it can be overblown, that college recruiting has really kind of worn on people. And if you can get an NFL job, people will jump for it. So it does have to be, to Nathan's point, something that people, want to take and want to make that leap for. But it also has to fit kind of what Ohio State is as a scheme, right? There can be a great offensive coordinator out there who is a run first, get low, fire off, hat on a hat type of offensive coordinator that might fit criteria, but that doesn't fit Ohio State. So it has to fit in a couple of different ways. The person has to be able to want this job, to be able to take this job, but then it also has to fit kind of what Ohio State is and what Ohio State wants to do.
Another thing I wanted to say, though, is this is an abrupt departure, but I also don't know that this was ever set up to be what Ryan Day was probably expecting when he brought Jim Knowles in. Because Bill O'Brien's head coaching background is different. He was a success at Penn State. He was a success, for the most part, as I said, with the Texans. The idea that he would be back in the head coaching role, maybe in the short term, had probably always had to be a possibility here. Whereas someone like Jim Knowles, I think Ryan Day turned to because he thought he could come in and stabilize the defense for a long time in a way that Ryan Day needed someone to come in and stabilize the defense and completely take him out of that room. And on offense, Ryan Day wants someone he can turn this over to, but Ryan Day is still going to be involved with the offense, just not in the same ways and maybe to the same degree that he was before. So this was always potentially going to be a short-term stint, just as it was, frankly. Like Bill O'Brien was only at Alabama for a little bit. He was only back with the Patriots for a little bit. Now, obviously, they moved on from Belichick, and that was going to change anyway. But, I didn't necessarily think that this was someone who was going to come here and be Ohio State's offensive coordinator for the next decade. This always seemed like, to me, someone who was coming here to do this job for Ryan Day, be this hired hand for Ryan Day, and then in a year or 2 or 3, you were probably going to have to go find someone just like him again. But if it's happening with the right timing, and you're the one who can be the one to bite first on those guys coming available, you're in good shape. So the timing of this is a little bit awkward just because it's February 9th as we're talking about this, and it was January 18th when he was hired. So that's quick. And then it's weird to have this happen within a month of spring practice. But I also don't know that I think they were going to have to find someone again in the short term anyway. I didn't think that Bill O'Brien was going to come here and make it a career at Ohio State.
So let's put a pin in that conversation because I think that's a great astute point. And I want to expound on that when we come back here from the break. But I will say this, the NFL season is going to end on Sunday after the Super Bowl. And so obviously that coaching carousel will maybe open up a brand new group of options that probably weren't on the table when Ryan Day was first making this decision because there are coaches who are still playing in the playoffs. So it is, it's going to be interesting to see how quick of a turnaround Ryan Day makes this decision. Is it something that this decision is coming out the news is breaking on a Friday morning. Is this something that by Wednesday afternoon of the following week, Ryan Day has made up his mind? Or is this something that maybe he takes his time with? Because he really does have until spring practice starts. Because right now, technically, the team belongs to Mick Marotti and the strength and conditioning staff right now as they go through winter workouts. So he has a bit of time, and the coaches aren't on the road recruiting anymore. So he has a bit of time. And so does he rush this decision, or is this something, does he take a step back? And if he had 4 names on the list the first time he went around there, he adds another 5 or 6 names to that list because he has the time to do that. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get more into this breaking news story. Bill O'Brien leaving Ohio State just 3 weeks after he was hired as its offensive coordinator right here on Buckeye Talk.